Have you ever stopped and wondered why you react a certain way in relationships? Or why some, frustrating patterns just seem to repeat over and over in your life? Well, a lot of the time, the blueprint for all that stuff gets quietly drawn way back in our childhood. So today, we're going to dive into a really powerful way of understanding these patterns, and it's called family trauma syndrome. So, you hear these three phrases from clinical psychologist Dr. Lane Lassiter, and they are basically the three pillars of what he calls family trauma syndrome. Now, I know they might sound a little heavy, but trust me, they give an incredible amount of clarity to a struggle that so many people face, often in complete silence, without even having a name for what they're going through. So, what exactly is family trauma syndrome? Well, think of it as a name for this trio of connected issues that can pop up when someone grows up in a tough family environment. And listen, the goal here is not about blame, it's about understanding. Just giving this experience a name, giving it a structure, that's a huge first step in making sense of it all. Okay, to really get this, we've got to break it down. So let's take a look at each of the three core problems that make up this syndrome. And as we go, you might find that some of these feel, well, pretty familiar.
All right, first up, these emotional adjustments. Things like having a really shaky sense of self-worth or finding it hard to trust people. These aren't character flaws, not at all. They're actually survival strategies that we figured out as kids to cope. The only problem is we drag these old strategies into our adult lives, and that's where they can really hold us back from having healthy, happy relationships.
The second problem area is what we call self-defeating life patterns. And these are basically the roles we learned to play in our families. For instance, maybe you were the hero child, the one who had to be perfect all the time. That's compulsive achievement. Or maybe you were the family peacemaker, always putting everyone else's needs first, a classic sign of codependency. These roles can get so deep-seated that we keep playing them as adults, and it just leads to burnout, rocky relationships, or this constant feeling that nobody really gets us. And all of that, it leads us right to the third piece of this puzzle, addictions. I mean, when you're dealing with the pain of an unstable self-worth and these self-sabotaging patterns day in and day out, it's pretty natural to look for a way to just check out for a bit, to numb the pain. And that's exactly where addictions, whether they're chemical or behavioral, can start to take root. They're not the core problem, but a symptom of something much deeper.
Okay, so concepts and definitions are one thing, but a story makes it all real. So let's meet Daniel, and you'll see exactly how these three problems can get all tangled up in one person's life. His story is just a really powerful example of this whole syndrome in action.
This is what Daniel said when he finally reached out for help. A shocking, absolutely terrifying moment of rage, and it was aimed at the person he loved more than anyone, his son. That crisis, that single moment, became the thing that finally pushed him to understand where all his pain was coming from. So the situation itself was pretty simple, right? His teenage son, Ryan, came home late and swore at him. Happens all the time. But Daniel's reaction, it was anything but simple. It was a volcanic explosion of anger, so intense that it actually scared him. He was afraid he might physically hurt his own kid. And he knew, deep down, this wasn't just about a broken curfew. So, the big question is, where in the world did that level of rage come from? To really understand an explosion like that, you have to look at all the years of pressure that were building up right underneath the surface. So, let's go back, let's trace the roots of Daniel's pain. You see, Daniel's life was marked by a whole series of traumas, one after another. It started with a dad who was emotionally checked out. Then, his mom died suddenly, and he was just a teenager, forced to become a parent to his younger brothers. He turned to food to cope with the grief. And that pattern of taking on too much responsibility just followed him right into his marriage, where he was abandoned again, this time by his wife, leaving him to raise his son all by himself.
And here is the crucial piece. When his son Ryan started acting like a teenager, pulling away, rebelling, to Daniel, it didn't just feel like normal teenage stuff. On a deep, unconscious level, it felt like the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate abandonment. It pushed a giant button and triggered all that unhealed pain from his entire life, and it all came roaring out as uncontrollable rage.
But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about pain. It's actually a story about hope. Because recognizing that pattern, that was the key that unlocked the door to healing for Daniel. The second he understood why he was reacting, he could finally start the work to change it.
So Daniel's recovery, It was all about taking real, concrete steps. To deal with those self-defeating patterns, he worked on letting go of his need to control Ryan. To heal his emotional wounds, he finally faced all that buried grief in therapy. And to tackle his addiction, he found an amazing support system in Overeaters Anonymous and started a new eating plan. You see? He was systematically taking on all three parts of the syndrome.
And the result of all that hard work? Daniel lost 50 pounds. But that number, gosh, it represents so much more than just weight. It's a symbol of the emotional weight he finally let go of, the grief, the shame, the loneliness he'd been carrying around for decades. It was this huge internal transformation that you could literally see on the outside.
And this, right here, this is the real victory. It's bigger than the weight loss. It's bigger than having a better relationship with his son. For the first time, Daniel actually found something he'd never really had before: hope. He felt empowered. He realized he wasn't just doomed to repeat the past. He could make new choices.
Daniel's story is so powerful because it isn't just about him. It's really about a journey that so many of us are on, the journey from being controlled by these unconscious patterns to finally living a life of conscious choice. And that brings us to the main takeaway from this whole explainer.
Look, if there is one thing you remember from all of this, let it be this: awareness changes everything. Just by recognizing these patterns in your own life, the emotional stuff, the self-defeating behaviors, the ways you cope, you start to take away their power. You drag them out of the darkness and into the light, where you can finally do something about them.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Looking at your own life through this new lens, what patterns, big or small, might have their roots buried in your past? Remember, recognizing them isn't about blame. It's about freedom. The freedom to finally write your own future.